Welcome to the Irresistible Urge to Fall for Dramione Fanfiction. Today, we are diving into how three of the most iconic Dramione fanfics of our time, Irresistible Urge to Fall in Love for Your Enemy, Roses and Chains, and Alchemised, cross over from our three screens to bookstore shelves, transforming into this year's most talked about romantasy and dark fantasy releases. And honestly, the story how they got there is just as wild as the stories themselves. Hi, I'm Maria, or the channel of Read with Maria XOXO. I break down the books everyone is talking about, so if you love book talks, you're in the right place. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which of these books you would risk your TBR for. Now, before we jump to the reviews, let's set the stage with a bit of context for these fanfics, where they started, why they went viral, and how they have captured the hearts of the fans around the world. All three started live on Archive of Our Own, aka AO3, the fanfiction giant where entire fandoms thrive. For years, Dramione fanfics have quietly dominated the platform. In fact, if you look at Google Trends, Dramione fanfiction has consistently ranked among the top search fics pairings worldwide. And it's not just online research. TikTok and Bookstagram have been obsessed, trading edits, playlists, and even full-length reading guides for these exact stories. So when the publishers realized how massive the fanbase already were, it made sense to scoop them up. In just a few months this year, we saw a wave of releases: Roses and Chains and Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy in July 25, followed fast by Alchemised, released recently on 23rd of September. And the hype about this book, immediate. Pre-orders spiked, RX readers flooded social media, and suddenly what had been fanfic-only corners of the internet were front and center on bestsellers lists. But here is the kicker: the transition from fanfic to traditional publishing hasn't been smooth sailing. These books are being marketed as romantasy, yet when you open the covers, the reality, at least personally for me, was very different. Some lean more into romance, some into dark dystopia, some into pure fantasy greed, and the disconnect between marketing promise and actual coverage, it's fueling all this buzz and sometimes the backlash. So in this video, I'm not just reviewing them one by one, I want to break down how each one delivers or doesn't, what kind of vibes you can actually expect, and ultimately where they land on the scale of Harry Potter elements versus Handmaid's Tales, and how they delivered on their romantasy promise. We are starting with the two that are fun, dark, and definitely worth talking about. But stick with me till the end, because the last one, the book wrecked me in a way I didn't think was ever possible. Let's start with the Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy, the book I had the highest hopes for, and the one that taught me the hard way that fanfic polish doesn't always survive the jump to the print. You know, the moment when you pick up a book thinking, yes, this is going to be my new favorite romantasy, and then halfway through you're just scratching your head and thinking, that was me with the Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy. I actually got this as advanced reader copy from NetGalley, and because it was Dramione inspired, enemies to lovers, healer meets assassin, and a touch of forbidden romance, I was so ready. On paper, it had everything I love: slow burn tension, animal companions, magic, and banter. The setup was perfect. But here is the thing: while I was turning pages expecting smooth storytelling, the execution felt patchy. The path changes so abrupt, I had to stop and double check whose head I was in, and the tone kept wobbling, like one moment heartfelt and the next clunky and almost draft-like. That said, I don't want to undersell the charm it did have. The pet communication was adorable, and I really like seeing a softer side to a male lead who is usually written as cold and untouchable. Those moments still convinced me for some time that this could be the cozy romantasy and a rom-com I was looking for from the blurb of it. But then the writing style pushed me out of it. It flips between first person and third person without zero warning, and seriously, it made me feel less like a polished rat book and more like I was reading some fanfic draft still. And I don't want to say to drag fanfiction down, I love fanfiction, I read a ton of them, but when it's repackaged as a published romantasy and a rom-com, my expectations shifted and they were much higher. Would I recommend it? If you're a hardcore Dramione shipper who just wants to see that dynamic in a different skin, then yes, there is enjoyment in this one. But if you're coming in fresh and just looking for a clean, well-executed romantasy rom-com, this might leave you wanting more. And here is the interesting bit. Compared to the other fanfiction books we are looking at today, this one leans very heavily into the Harry Potter style of world-building elements, but completely skews the darker Handmaid's Tale commentary. There is none of them. It's pure romantasy vibe, but polish was just not there. So if we turn to our scale check, Harry Potter I would scale 4 stars. There was plenty of this Dramione energy. Handmaid's Tale had 0. There is none of it. Romantasy, I think it did fulfill this genre more or less. It was messy, but 4 stars. And execution of this book and how I rated it, it was a 2 star. It definitely needed more editing work. Fun premise, but not the most reliable romantasy rom-com brag. Let's see how Rose and Chains compare. Moving into Roses and Chains, and here is where my expectations got really twisted. This was another NetGalley advanced listener copper. I did it as an audio, and honestly, I hit play thinking I was about to sink into a lush romantasy trilogy starter. All the buzz was marketing it as the big romantasy of summer, but within a few chapters in, I realized personally for myself, it was not a romantasy. This was a very dark fantasy first and foremost. The world building in this book was impeccably detailed. You can tell the author put so much into the layers of politics and morality. The main character Brioni has this savior complex that drives her into some seriously gut-wrenching situations, and here's when the twist comes. Instead of giving us sweeping romance arc, the story veers into territory that gave me total Handmaid's Tale flashbacks. Loss of autonomy, systemic oppression, choices that don't feel like choices at all. Here now, I will be really honest with you. Some parts were really hard to listen to. The relationships were layered, yes, but also deeply uncomfortable at times. Please check trigger warnings for this one. There is a constant push and pull between fascination and unease, and it left me questioning whether this was even meant to be marketed as a romantasy at all. The romance moments in this one were like shadows tucked between very heavy and very grim plotline, and that's not to say it's badly written, because it's not. The prose is strong, the world is rich, the stakes are high, but the marketing personally for me felt really misleading. If you go in expecting romantasy, you are going to be blindsided by just how dark and brutal the story got really fast. For me personally, I struggled to stay fully engaged. The pacing dragged in parts, and Brioni's motivations didn't always feel believable. Sometimes her actions read more like a device for the plot than something true to her character, and when the atmosphere is this heavy, you really need those emotional anchors to keep you grounded. So would I totally recommend it? Yes, but with a big asterisk on top of it. If you like fantasy grim, morally complex, dripping with dystopian elements, and you can stomach some very triggering content, check the trigger warnings, then Roses in Chains will absolutely deliver. But if you're chasing romantasy vibes, which I was chasing, you might walk away disappointed. And compared to the others on our scale, this one sits almost on the opposite end of the spectrum from Irresistible Urge. It's got just a faint sprinkle of Harry Potter style magic, but the Handmaid's Tale in this one is seen everywhere. Romance isn't the driver here, it's a subplot and very dark one. So if we check on our scale check, I would give around 2 stars to Harry Potter elements. It had light touches in it, but nothing major. Around 5 stars to the Handmaid's Tale darkness. It was off the charts. Romantasy vibes for this one are barely 2. Romance was just less than 10% of the whole story, and execution for this book is around 3. It was a solid written book, but it was very heavy and exhausting. Didn't deliver these romantasy vibes it was marketed for. So compared to Irresistible Urge, it felt darker, far heavier, and much less accessible if you came for a fun romantasy. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments which of these books you would risk your TBR for. It really helps my channel grow, and I love talking about all these books with you. But now let's talk about the juggernaut, Alchemised. Before you even think about starting Alchemised by sending you, check the trigger warnings. I'm pretty begging you. This is not your typical romantasy. It's one of the darkest dystopian dark fantasy I have ever read. Written in third person, it gives a little distance, but don't be fooled. You are still, and I mean it, feel pretty everything, and you're getting destroyed every chapter on the way. Tropes you will find in this one are dark fantasy, amnesia, wanton setting, enemies to lovers in the most darkest sense possible, dystopia, morally grey hero and heroine, and every heavy trigger warning you can imagine. Here is a list of them. I'm advising to stop this video right now and check. If you're not ready to read this book, then you're not ready. Only if you're okay to live with these trigger warnings for 1,000 pages long, only then I would recommend trying to read this book. Quick note to this one, I haven't read Manacled and I don't plan to. I have reviewed Alchemised as a standalone, which it absolutely deserves. Yes, you might recognize echoes of Harry Potter visuals in here, but the most it reminded me was The Handmaid's Tale. And fun fact, one key element was actually changed for copyright reasons. Let me know if you know which one. To me, that only made it feel sharper, more deliberate, and more original. Now for the story itself. A woman with no memory, a war that left only ghosts. Helena Marina was once an alchemist. Now she's a prisoner of her captors, of her fractured mind, and of the past she can't reach. The necromancers say she's irrelevant. The resistance agrees, but someone is lying, and Helena is about to find out why. The book unfolds in 3 parts, 3 timelines to be honest. Part 1, which was the present, and it's the most darkest part. I was not joking about these trigger warnings, you see them pretty early. Part 2, past, leading up to her capture. And Part 3, the aftermath. I didn't know the structure going in, but I recommend reading in order. It all locks into place by the end. Just be warned, it's the heaviest, the hardest scenes hit around 20 till 25%. And those trigger warnings, again repeating myself, they are not a formality here at all. They are really dark, and please check them out. Helena, she's a walking contradiction. If you strip away the trauma and just look at her choices, her loyalty to the residents almost makes no sense. These were the people who barely acknowledge her. She sacrifices herself again and again for a cause that gave her nothing back. We barely see her connect with anyone outside Kane and Lila Bayard, and yet when she says, if not me, then who? I loved her. She is stubborn and strange and quietly heroic in a way that felt unforgettable. Kane, our MNC, is the definition of morally grey. I cannot forgive him and I won't. But the real question this book asks us as a reader, can love survive unforgivable things? His layers unfold slowly and painfully. Lines like there is nobody left to fight for and I will fight for you always, they just absolutely wrecked me. That third person path saved me at times. It gave me space to breathe, but there is no denying it. He loves her, Helena, deeply, and despite every darkness possible this world holds. Helena and King as a couple, I never thought they are having a happily ever after, or that it's even possible for this world. I braced myself for heartbreak until the very last page, but I was so wrong, and days later I realized after all that darkness we needed this light. Without it, readers would have revolted, and I would have revolted too. The writing of this book, immaculate. Every detail, every hierarchy, every magical term, so precise and deliberate. Yes, the story begins as a fanfiction, but the editing of Alchemised itself, the language, the structure, that's seriously big work. I couldn't put it down even when every chapter shattered my heart and me. It's a maze of pain and beauty, and when you finally reach the end of it, you step into the light. There were a lot of side characters too, which reminded me like of Aunt Lydia figure. I'm not spoiling, or Luke, who was the resistance leader, but he felt pointless to me. He never appeared directly and I hated every mention of him. Then there were the Bayer twins, they were protectors of Luke. Resistance leader, Lila and Soren only made sense for me for in case of the plotline by the end of it. But most of the book I was just asking myself why there are so many side characters. They don't bring anything to the plot. I only watch on two characters, Helena and King. When we come to the magic system of this book, animacy, vivimacy, necromancy, I devoured every single bit of it. It's original, it's haunting, and it's seamlessly tied to the world. This isn't just background flavor, the magic here breathes. I can't recommend Alchemised for its darkness alone, but for its depth, its emotional devastation, its breaking storytelling, I'm in awe. It broke me down. I sobbed an hour after finishing it, and I still think it will stay with me forever. It's the book you read and then you remember it your whole life. Yeah, I'm seeing Stanley Yu in 3 weeks and I still can't believe it. We will introduce Alchemist as the most hyped and the most infamous of the three, highlight its manacled truths, then dig into how it's actually dark dystopian fantasy with tiny threads of romance, not romantasy. To return back to our scale, here are 1 stars for Harry Potter elements, at least for me, and I'm not the biggest Harry Potter fan, but I didn't see many crossovers except probably how they look like. 2, The Handmaid's Tale darkness. 5, I would even put 10 if I would have a 10 scale grading, but on this scale 5 is the maximum and it maxed out on 5, it's 5 plus. Romantasy vibes, they are like 2 stars. The romance was just very small subplot here and it was not the main story. Execution though, 5 plus stars. It is super well written, but intense. Intense! Here is the lineup of the all 3 fanfics on the romantasy scale. The differences are wild. Irresistible Urge, lots of Harry Potter energy, true romantasy vibes, but weak execution. Rose and Chains, only traces of Harry Potter, heavy Handmaid's Tale, and romance is a subplot. Whereas Alchemized, some Harry Potter elements, pure Handmaid's Tale darkness, and not really a romantasy. Which raises the question, should publishers even be marketing these as romantasy in the first place? Now I want to hear from you. Which of these fanfic turned books do you think deserves the romantasy label, and which one belongs firmly in the dark fantasy? Drop your thoughts below. I read every single comment, and if you love deep dive reviews into hyped up book talk and Bookstagram books, don't forget to hit subscribe. We got many popular books breakdowns coming.